Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Abundant Life Mastery Mentor Series. If you're just tuning in, my name is Candice. Thank you so much for being here. If you're here, you have felt a calling on your heart to awaken into your soul purpose, to understand abundance to a new level, and to access deep, deep self love to awaken your knowledge of the new earth. Today with me, I have Stefanos. He is a relationship alchemist, and it's crazy because if you've watched the entire series, you have watched this element flow of love, and it's almost like this air water flow that has gone through all of these interviews. We've talked about sacred union and trust and authenticity and self-love, and I'm so excited to have Stefanos with us today because I know he's going to continue that vibration that we've created here.
And thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you're up to in the world, what you're creating?
Yeah, I thrive in the realm of relationships, so relationship to self, intimate relationships, romantic partnerships, and just relationships to elements of our lives that are really important to us, whether it's our purpose, maybe it's our past, maybe it's a dream or an aspiration that we have. And I just really help people in the world create a clearer conduit to embodying, attaining, experiencing that thing, that person, that relationship that is really, really important to them, that person meaning themselves as well, right? And so often we have blocks that we cannot see, unconscious aspects of self that are infiltrating the present moment to draw us back and out and away from what we truly desire. And just really helping people get clearer in their lives, not only from a place of cognition and intellect, that's part of it, sure, that understanding, but really in their bodies, helping them clear out any stored trauma, any experience that they've had that have been detrimental to them, that they haven't quite equilibrated or come to some level of peace with, and just really helping people shift that and move that.
Yeah, shifting out from all of that blockage, that heaviness, so they can come into the lightness
Hmm.
of the relationships. I love it. Can you define to me, how do you define relationship?
I think it depends on the context, but
Mhm. Let's start with
relationship,
self.
yeah. I mean, it's really just having an awareness that the relationship exists. For most people, it's we don't understand, or we don't have a capacity to connect to what's really important to us. Often that has been shunned, and we've developed a habit of minimizing our voices or following the status quo. And so relationships exist. It's not a matter of whether they exist or not. Everything is in relationship to something else. It's the realm of duality that we live in. But it's the quality of relationship that we're looking for. And so many people are so scared to ask for what they want or explore what may be of deep, deep, visceral and spiritual, emotional, relational interest to them. And so, how I define relationship is beyond just, oh, I have an awareness that I am dependent in some capacity on something. And that doesn't necessarily mean codependence in that sense, but just dependence. So, I'm sitting on a chair right now. I have a relationship with this chair. I'm speaking into a microphone. The microphone and me have a relationship to some degree. I know this isn't a sentient, cognizant being, but or it's an inanimate object, but I still have a relationship with it. And so, at every step of the way, it's being really diligent and very deliberate in terms of what type of relationship do I want to have with the people in my life, with the things that are important to me, with my dreams, my aspirations, intimacy, sexuality, trauma, the big things, joy, happiness. What type of relationship do I actually want to have with these things that are in my life that make me who I am fundamentally? And so I think for me, how I define relationship, it's the quality of the interaction that is not blocked or hindered by what we cannot see.
Do you feel like there is absolutely a way for us to never have any blocks?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't think so. I don't think that that could be possible in some in some expression of ourselves that is unknown to us at the moment. But I think it's less about achieving this unblocked or quote unquote perfect state or purity of joy. It's more how we relate to the experiences that we've had and the pains and the fears and the traumas and the joys and the happiness and all of that. It's how we relate to it. And so what tends to happen, this has been very true in my own life experience, I still become frustrated and agitated. That is prompted often by old stuff, right? It's amplified by old stuff, old neurological, behavioral, emotional, reactive patterns that are embedded within me. 10 years ago, maybe that would take me a week to shift, where it's now it takes me a few minutes or a few seconds or an hour, whatever it may be, right? So the relationship changes not only in time, but also in intensity and also in how I choose to interact with it, my awareness with that pain or that block or whatever we want to call it. And then I'm sure, yes, some of those blocks we can completely free ourselves from, definitely. And will we ever be free of blocks? If you become quote unquote enlightened, maybe. I mean, that's another conversation. It's a completely different conversation, because we throw that word around sometimes, just like in a blasé fashion. But beyond that, if you're growing and living and you're having experiences every day with people and yourself, you're going to create, call it karma, right? You're going to
Mhm.
accumulate experiences that feed into the unconscious self, the unseen. As an example, it's 100 million bits of information per second that's unconscious, that is registered in the body mind complex, versus 50 to 60 bits of information per second that is conscious information registered. So you can see there's a lot of not 100 million, 1 million. There's a big difference in terms of what we're actually processing and registering, of what we're aware of and what we're not aware of. And so there's going to be stuff that comes from that. It's just how we deal with it that really defines us.
What really came up for me and resonated with me is about a year and a half ago, I ventured into the world of life transformation leadership coaching. And before that, I remember being like saying that I had had that somewhat enlightened state. I'd done all the work, I'd had all the, all the things, all the classes and stuff like that. And then what you said about being able to shift quicker, that's developing that superpower. And I know for right now, a lot of my clients, that's what's coming up like around their heart. There's these experience and these blockages coming up around their heart. How can I, and the things that I'm hearing are how can I shift into my heart faster? Because there
Mhm.
seems to be this disconnect between what's going on up here. So all those thoughts and all those things, and how do I continuously make decisions from here? Can you talk into that a little bit? That connection between the head and the heart and getting there?
Yeah, we live in a very cerebral world, and we're taught and told that the value of our human expression comes largely from our intellect. And whilst there's some truth to that, we've also disconnected from our emotional expression, or our ability to feel and empathize and engage in radical self-acceptance and acceptance of others, and compassion, and empathetic resonance and loving presence. Another reason is because we're so busy in the world. We have so much to do. We're exhausted at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year. It's just these days rolling into themselves, and we're almost stuck in this state of sympathetic nervous system arousal state. And we're stuck in this habitual pattern of doing more, doing more, doing more to define our worth. And this very, again, the cognitive brain or the skull brain is very active, but we also have activity. We also have neuronal activity here in the heart, and also in our gut, in our enteric system. And so these three brains communicate with each other consistently, but we favor the cerebral brain so much. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's just that we do it too much. It's like if all you had was pizza every day for the rest of your life, that would probably be pretty boring at some point, but also not exactly well balanced, right? And so if we have
Mhm.
access to these three core areas of our existence and expression, and we're limiting use in this one here, then we're imbalanced and lopsided in how we're seeing the world. And so we're going to feel imbalanced and lopsided. We're not going to feel quite in homeostasis, which is what we all want as human beings, right? We all want to be in that homeostatic state. We don't want to feel too cold. We don't want to feel too hot, ideally, right?
Yes.
Unless we're jumping in a sauna or a cold plunge, but we do that ultimately to feel more balance in our lives, right? To feel aliveness and more balance ultimately. And we don't stay in there 24/7. We want the just right scenario. So if we stay in our brains too much, we try and figure out problems or issues or pains that we're experiencing just with our minds, just intellectually, through analysis and through that level of observation, then we're often going to only have resolution from that level of consciousness. And so it does become imperative that we cease to isolate not only the heart, but cease to isolate ourselves from other people, and we start connecting in a more humane way to ourselves and to others. And that begins with us. So self-compassion, self-love, loving presence inwardly, empathetic resonance inwardly. That means, can you understand and connect to and feel, with compassion as well, what you are experiencing, what you have experienced? Can you do that in a safe way? And this is what opening our hearts is really about, is being able to feel and express and be in the world in a very authentic way, with less self-consciousness, like less inhibition, with more openness and transparency and authenticity, without that fear of being judged and ridiculed and humiliated, and then holding back our expression, which disconnects us from our hearts, which puts us in this over-analytical place. And that's part of that. That's coming back into the heart.
Have you ever heard of the word Salbona?
No,
It's
I like it.
it's I'll send you an email about it.
Mm,
Salbona. I could never spell it. I'm sorry, everyone that's watching. I don't know how to spell it. It is an African term that means when I look at you, I am looking at you with all of the lifetimes before me.
it's
And
beautiful.
I look into your eyes and I see all of the lifetimes before you, all of your
Mm,
ancestors, all of your
mm,
family members. And if I always
mm,
looked at somebody else or even myself in that way, it's called Salbona. We see you.
mm. It's beautiful. And very true for me anyway.
Yeah, that's what comes up for me. What are you noticing with your clients has been the way that they are connecting with how to move past the fear, past the inauthenticity, past that experience? What's been the general theme that's created ease with your clients lately?
Having a very safe place to express the fullness of who they are. That's essentially, I mean, there's more to it than that. There are
Like
specific tools and
catharsis?
yeah, that's part of it, but there are specific tools and techniques to release trauma. Not everyone's experienced trauma in their life, but most people have. And trauma resides on a spectrum, right? There's big T trauma, very overt, obvious trauma, such as physical abuse, sexual abuse. War is an example of trauma, being in a car accident. And then there's little T trauma, the subtle nuances that we experience on a day-to-day basis as children during our formative years, but as adults as well, in our relationships, in our self-talk, in the way that we're seen and viewed, and the way that we interact with others and so forth. And that compounds and forms attitudes and behaviors and patterns of being and so forth. And they can either be healthy patterns or unhealthy patterns, right? An example of that is, you go home and you're really excited because you got a B plus on an exam, and one of your parents say, well, you could have got an A, but yeah, you did all right. Like that can be I didn't do well enough. Oof,
Switch.
switch. And then we start looking for it because we want confirmation bias, right? And we start creating it to some extent and so forth. So, and then we can develop patterns of victimhood and martyrdom after that. And I mean, the list goes on. But um, what I'm what was your original question? Sorry, got
What is
lost.
no, it's okay. It's okay. What is the theme of how your clients are removing
Oh,
themselves
yes.
from
Yeah,
that
sorry. Yeah.
fakeness, the
Yeah,
inauthenticity?
safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's creating a safe physical environment and emotional environment for them to explore these nuances within themselves and these unknown areas of their life that they've been avoiding for so long, which just keep giving them more of the same experience, but they don't know where it's coming from. This is where the importance of understanding and cognition comes in, because it helps us create a safe perimeter of, oh, I understand what's happening within me now. Now I can explore that a little better, or I can go a little deeper in that. And then
Mm.
feeling safe in their bodies, in their minds, in their hearts, in the constitution that is them, to actually explore that, to release it from their constitution, to release it from their organism. And that then there are tools and techniques to do that. There is somatic therapy and healing to do that. Breath work is a modality to move and shift that. Interacting with a client in a, somatic therapy and healing is a way to do that as well. And so this is the biggest thing. We need to feel safe enough. We need to feel that the person that we are sharing with sees us and is not judging us, is not scared of our big energy, whether it's joy, whether it's happiness, fear, sadness, anger, aggression. And that's very difficult for most people to hold that, because they haven't done their own inner work and they're triggered. And then the neuroception of the body, the unconscious understanding and observation of the nervous system at an unconscious level, feels that and experiences that this person's not safe. They can't hold my energy, so I'm just going to keep repressing myself, which builds more anger and more resentment and more low self-worth. And so the theme is safety. We have to create safety. We are a social organism. We are a social being. We are socialized beings. We're relational beings. We need to be witnessed, seen, heard, loved, understood, respected, appreciated in front of others. Our nervous systems have evolved that way, our digestive systems, our immune systems. At a molecular cellular level, we have evolved through that witnessing, through that socialization. And when we feel alone or isolated, physiologically, we shut down. Stress hormone is released through the body, that just everything just shuts down, and it weakens us physiologically.
Whew. I've definitely felt that over the last couple of weeks, I'd say. And I know a lot, yeah, I feel like that's been in the air for a lot of my clients and a
Mm,
lot of the people that I'm seeing in the world. And
yeah,
um, actually, one of my spiritual coaches, she has me on a stretch to have 50% of my day in task and 50% of my day in spirituality.
that's awesome.
And that is the way that I am headed. If someone wants to make an appointment with me on Friday, the answer is no. Or,
Yep,
and making those discernments so that I do have more
yep.
time for myself.
I'm in the same position. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My guidance for me personally as well, from the people that mentor me and that I trust and respect, is that very, very message: is rest a little more, play a little more, don't be so hard on yourself, relax, soften a little more, have that space.
Yes, I kid you not. I have three soul words, and my soul words, which I wear all the time, are committed, powerful, and playful.
Mm,
And like always remembering that play piece. And
mm,
something that has come up for me, and because I am also a reflection of my clients, I'm seeing it in my clients,
yeah.
there's this disconnect of play. Like play in the
Yes.
past has triggered this experience. Like I can't color outside the lines because someone's not going to think it this way.
Yeah. I made one of my clients a while ago go. He was visiting the UAE. He does a lot of business there, and I made him make him. I requested very firmly that he go to in Dubai, Atlantis theme park, and just literally get on the water slides. And he just spent a day there, and he would just send me photos all day. It was one of the best things he ever did, and very healing for him as well, for that little boy that never got that opportunity to just be a kid, because he was under so much pressure from his father, so much pressure to perform and seek validation from his father. He never got to have fun as a child. And that really played out in every facet of his relationship as an adult as well.
Permission slip to have fun, everybody. If you take one
Yeah.
thing from this interview, permission slip to have fun. My boyfriend, when we were, my boyfriend just met my parents this past Christmas, and we
Mm,
went over, yeah, that was, and I've never had that experience before in my life, and I'm
wonderful.
34. Yeah, it was,
Mm,
I love my dad and my mom and my sisters. I was just so excited to bring him into our family unit. And we went over to my aunt and my uncle's house, and I have two cousins that are 10 and 12, and
mm,
they got these like machine gun looking Nerf gun things that you need to wear protection for. And we ended up, and it's crazy because I could see the old pattern coming up inside me. My boyfriend was running circles around the boys. They were playing. It was so fun, and I was so fun. And in my head was like, we should go play. Or in my heart, rather, my gut was like, we should go play. And my head's like, no, that there's enough play going on.
Yeah.
Well,
Is there ever enough play?
No, no, there's not. And so I went over to one of my cousins and I was like, where are the other guns? Give me one of these other guns. And then we just went around. So I ended up with a black eye. I ended up with a swollen lip from this thing. And it was the most fun I had had in forever. And then I felt like, I remember, yeah. And I remember saying to my aunt, I don't feel like I'm connected to my cousins. But in that moment, that play, that I could feel that heart to heart connect. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, it's I think another thing that comes up for me too in what you said is a lot of my clients, because again, I am, my clients have somewhat of a controlling personality type, as do I. And this one of my mentors said to me recently, a controller personality type is a s'more. There is a cookie, a hard, tough cookie on the outside, and inside there's a mushy marshmallow ready to play, ready to be squished and loved and ooey gooey. And I feel like and I take that outside and I see that in everybody. It's not just people that are controlling personality types. It's everybody. What if we played more, and this is medicine for me, what if we played more with our parents? I mean, have you seen one of your clients have an experience where they played more with their parents? I'm 34 and I would love to play with my parents more. And I have this story, like, how do I do that?
I think you've got to initiate the conversation if you have awareness around it. Like that's,
Yeah.
those of us that have knowledge is power, awareness is power, wisdom is power. And we have the power with greater awareness, whoever we are, to really apply that wisdom or that conversation or that inquiry into the container of our relationships. And so if you're someone that really sees this opportunity to play more with your parents, and maybe that's just, in part psychology or Gestalt style therapy or inner child healing and inner child work, these are the parts of you, your little girl that's maybe 7 years old or 9 years old that wants to play with mum and dad and wants to relive certain experiences, to have a redo, to equilibrate maybe the pain or the trauma or the disappointment or the distance or whatever it may be around that. And as an adult, you get to integrate all these different parts of you in such a way that gives you an opportunity to have fun and play and heal. And so if you have that awareness, that's something that's really strong for you. Firstly, it's really important to work on, okay, why am I not saying something? Why am I not spending time here with my parents? Well, I'm scared of rejection. Or I'm scared of them saying, no. Okay, well, that's something that you get to work with within yourself, right? And you don't have to be quote unquote perfect before you approach them and entice them to play with you, whatever that may look like. It's got to be relative to their circumstances as well. But it could just be in the way that you show up in your attitude. You're more playful with them. You're joking with them. You're lighter with them. You're less serious. You're changing the way that you would interact in that common dynamic with them. That could be the beginning. That could be the beginning of play, right? It may not necessarily be getting Nerf guns or gel blasters or something like that. I mean, I'm invested in a company. A good friend of mine's got this. It's gel blasters, and these water pellets. They're amazing. You're not going to get a swollen lip from it. I'm giving him a plug because they're really cool.
Send me the link after this. I will give them to my boyfriend again.
Yeah, and it's great fun. But your parents may not want to do that, but they may want to shift the way they see you. But you got to shift the way you see yourself first. And then you've got to bring that into the dynamic. So you give them an opportunity to see you differently. We often, again, in our world, in our fast-tracked, short-term, quick fix gratification world that we live in, we want the result now and immediately. Like we think, well, I want to play with my parents. Well, how do I get there from 0 to 100? Well, you got to go, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 8, 1. Okay. 1.5, 2. Like it's a step, it's a process. And so if we can just focus on the one thing that you need to do next or be next, that's really important. Forget about the outcome. Make it more process driven. Make it more, okay, I want to play more. What does that look like? I want to play more with my parents. Well, what does that look like and feel like for me? What's a block there for me? That's a great question to ask. Or what's stopping me from playing with my parents? And then you start answering the question, right? You start and exploring, well, no, they, play with my parents. Oh, I'm embarrassed. Okay, I'm embarrassed. What does embarrassment mean? Where have I felt that before? And you start exploring embarrassment, and people don't want to do the inner work. It requires effort. And most of us just don't want to do that because it also at times carries discomfort and pain and unknown. And part of that unknown is frustration internally, but also if we don't know something, we're wrong. This is again, we're a very cerebral society, right? Well, no, you're not wrong. You're just on a journey and you don't know yet, or you're not aware of it yet. And so, you know, ultimately you want to do something, you've just got to go and fucking do it. That's as simple as that. You want to play, then you've just got to go fucking play. Like, and you're going to get uncomfortable because it's uncomfortable for you. Great. Get comfortable getting uncomfortable.
I love that. Mel Robbins style, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do it. Do it. And then reflect. Because that's another key component that we miss out in our lives. You can have two people, assuming they're quote unquote identical, going through similar experiences. The one individual that reflects and is introspective on their experiences, feels their experiences, contemplates them deeply after, as opposed to the one that doesn't, will be far better off in terms of the wisdom they cultivate, the embodied knowledge, right? That they're able to cultivate and the growth they have in every area of their life, the way they see life. They'll see life in a more ideal way. I mean, you lined up 1,000 people and said, hey, would you rather be happy or sad? Unless they have a pathology, 1,000 out of 1,000 people are going to say, I'd rather be happy. That doesn't mean that sadness it's not a healthy emotion. It's just an undesirable, consistent place to be. It's uncomfortable, right? So my point to that is that person that reflects on their selves and their experiences is going to have far more desirable states of being that they are immersed in, because they're able to self-regulate at a deeper level. They're able to learn and extract the value from that experience and then roll it into the next one. That's really important as well, that introspection and reflection. But again, we've been conditioned to be, I don't even know if it's laziness, but we've been conditioned to find the easy way through. And sometimes, hate to break it to you, I'm not saying that always take the difficult path. By no means. That's not healthy either. But a little challenge sometimes can fortify you as an individual and take you to places, take you to your edges that you never knew existed.
You get to stretch that muscle.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the other interviews that I had for this series, Katrina Horn, she said that exact thing. She said, if I could stretch my play muscle, if I could stretch my authenticity muscle, if I could stretch my trust muscle, and then she said, if I could trust my pleasure muscle, how do I pull the ceiling up? If I'm living an okay life, how do I pull that ceiling up and create that better life? If you if you lined up, I was a career nurse for 11 years. And if I could line up, and I worked specifically in hospice and oncology for most of it. And if I lined up all of my patients and all of everyone that I spoke to, I guarantee you none of them would say, I hated playing. All of them had most of them had some variation of a regret for not playing more, not connecting with their loved ones more, not being with their siblings more, not going for that dream, not going for that goal. It's this paradigm that we get to shift. We have an opportunity to shift it. You have Stefanos, you have something that I came across in your website. You have a product that I wanted to ask you about. I believe it was called Conscious Union.
Not Conscious Union, no.
Sacred
Union?
Was it Sacred Union? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Can we dive into that and where your inspiration for that came from?
Yeah. Oh, it's a loaded question. So the product is a process that my wife and I created. It's about It's an audio, but I think the audio is maybe an hour to 60 to 90 minutes long, somewhere there. And it goes into explaining at greater depth what sacred union is, why it's important. Then we take people through a process, and you can do it by yourself. You can do this mirror work that you can do. It's obviously better with an individual, whether you're in a couple or you do it with a very close friend, and it can work with any human being that you trust, respect, and revere, and that's mutual, of course. Where did that product come from? It's more, why is sacred union important to me? And it's important to me because as a child growing up, I didn't experience that. I experienced violence and volatility in my parents, in their dynamic, violence towards myself and my brother. There was just constant fighting. It was a very unsafe place, right? And so my definitional perception of marriage and union and two people coming together wasn't harmonious. It was very abrasive and aggressive and tense, very tensile, very painful. And so I spent many years emulating that in my own relationships until I hit a breaking point, and I chose to make some changes, a lot of changes, many changes actually. And it didn't come without intense pain for me. And that was my journey. And I really do believe that the state of the collective, side note, collective human consciousness is, unfortunately, we don't really learn deeply and embrace transformation without some pretty intense pain. That's just where we are at the moment. I definitely believe there's ways to shift, change, transform, transmute without pain. But where we are at the moment collectively, it feels like that's the season that we are in as a spiritual collective, right? As a humanity. And so it really came from, there's got to be something more than this, because I would hear stories about people being together for 20, 30, 40 years and still being really intimately in love with each other and care about each other deeply, and they would treat each other with so much reverence and respect. I never got that. I mean, my father would call my mother, horrible names, like, a whore and a slut and all these things, right? And my mother would call him an asshole and other derogatory names. It was just and in front of us as children, so it was this constant barrage of, is this what a relationship is? So that really informed me as an adult and how I showed up in my relationships as well. Although I wasn't quite like that, I had the energy of that though, right? I had the energy of that. And that's really where this deeper dive into what is sacred union? What does it mean to be healthy in relationships? Now, I don't always get it right, but I'm consistently aware of it. And I keep coming back to, how can I do better? How can I really show up in a truer, authentic self? How can I not come from my own reactive patterns and wounds, but rather really see that person, witness them, and witness myself in the process as well? And so that's really where it was born from.
I love that. And we may not have time for it, but do you have a technique that you could share with the audience in this interview?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, the Sacred Union tech. It's a free download. So I mean,
Okay.
it would be best because you have both Christine and I, my wife and I, sharing a series of techniques that we've put together to help you begin the process of deepening intimacy in your relationship. And honestly, it's a free download, so there's no charge to it. That would be better, because there is a process, right? There's definitely a process to it.
Okay. I want to dive in there, and I don't want to search for a question, but there's something I want to dive into sacred union more, because
Yeah.
what I've heard so often, last year when I wanted to support my parents in enrolling into this life transformation course that I've been taking, I asked my parents how they would rate their relationship. And my dad remarried when I was 6. So I have a second mom and a biological mom. And my
Okay.
dad and my second mom, I said, how do you rate your marriage? And they said, well, a level 10, and I said, okay, well, what's the next step? I wanted to ask how their sex life was. Are you guys
Mm.
still sexually intimate with each other? I actually wanted to know my parents. And I just I just hear it over and over again. There's these pieces that are missing to the union. And I know it's not just about sexual intimacy, it's about emotional intimacy. So into me, you see. So I don't have a question, but I would just love to hear your thoughts on like keeping that intimacy together, and any of the blocks that come up when you're not playing in your relationship anymore is what comes to me.
I think the blocks that come up are very, resentment, big, dense emotions such as anger and aggression, distance, shame comes up when we cease to play because we objectify a partner, not just necessarily sexually, but we just see them as a means to an end, whether that's a financial means to an end or satisfying an emotional urge that we're not healing within ourselves, and we become codependent in the relationship. And so, sacred union is a great deal about around sovereignty, autonomy, and self-worth and ownership, responsibility of one's own self and what we bring into the relationship. There's many definitions per se to sacred union that I align with. And, one of them is 1 + 1 = 3. There's two whole people coming into the relationship, feeding into the third entity, which is the relationship itself. And that often can carry equal or greater value than the individuals themselves, because the impact that your relationship can make, in your family dynamic, your immediate family, or your children, your extended family, your community, these days the world to some extent, because of social media and the way that we're able to the way that we've digitized communication and we have accelerated the speed of communication and connection. So it can be very inspiring for others. So I think we have an obligation, a duty almost, to be the best versions of ourselves and allow that container to carry intelligent hope into the world for what's possible in terms of intimacy and love and sharing and building community and breaking past patterns and so forth. I'm a big believer that sacred union carries a tremendous capacity, the integrity of an intimate relationship, particularly with self, but a romantic partnership carries tremendous capacity to really apply the healing to the world, but also to create and evolve the next expression of humanity. And I really believe that. And I see that and I feel that as well. And so sacred union for me, and just again, integrity in relationship and carrying a willingness to consistently work in that relationship is very valuable for the world and for self. It's a
Yeah.
breeding ground for deeper healing. It really is. We're mirrors for each other. Now, that doesn't mean that the other person does the healing for you, but they create a safe enough container and space because they're committed to their own growth. So they're not going to be reactive when you bring your stuff. And you don't have two reactive people, because that's the issue, right? In relationship, we're going to trigger our old unresolved stuff. And what tends to happen is both people are reactive at the same time consistently. That compounds over a longer period of time, and the relationship becomes not only undesirable, but it becomes intolerable. So people break up. They break up without really healing those wounded parts of themselves. And they just keep bringing them to the next relationship. And sacred union is saying, well, we're going to break that pattern. We're committed to our growth. Hey, we may not end up together because it's not in our path, but if that's the case, we're going to do so with depth of learning, depth of growth, and deep mutual admiration and reverence for each other.
A world like that. Can you imagine if every union, every partnership was like that?
I can. That's why I need to play and rest more, because I work tirelessly towards that and embodying that myself. But I do also need a break.
I'm on board for that. 50%, 50%.
I like that.
Yeah, yeah. And we're actually nearing the end of our time, but I know you're also in the middle of a shift in your company and a brand change. Can you tell the audience about that?
Yeah, it's more just what's the next iteration of me look like in the world in terms of, the people that I'm attracting and the people that I'm working with at a deeper level and so forth. And honestly, I don't know too much about it right now because I'm just the beginning
I
stages
love
of that. So
that.
there's a
I
lot of
love
unknown and mystery, which is exciting. And it's I don't want to keep the same title that I have, relational alchemist. Like, does that still resonate with me? Yes, it does, but does it, I'm looking at the various levels of how I express and how I interact with people.
that.
And am I really it's not even the volume of impact that I want, but the impact in the way that I want to. And am I being as true to myself as possible? So I'm exploring, I'm asking some questions, right?
How long have you been on the path of asking the questions?
I've been on the path of asking questions since I was probably 3 years old. That I can tell you with great certainty. Didn't have many answers for a long time, but I've been asking questions for a while.
Well, I'm appreciative that you continue to ask questions, and thank
Mm.
you for being here with us today. Is there anything that's on the top of your mind that you would want the audience to hear, that you feel like they need to hear?
I touched on this earlier around willingness. I think willingness is something that's really underplayed and understated in our world, particularly when the going gets tough. Be willing to just sit with that. I'm not saying be a glutton for punishment or anything like that. That's not healthy. But just don't run so quickly, or don't be so abrasive or aggressive, or don't go into the reactive protective strategy that you'd normally go in. Just be willing to explore, okay, what's my role here? Be willing to feel some of the fear, some of the pain. Be willing to play and experience joy. Be willing to love a little deeper and be a bit more vulnerable and open your heart a little more, and risk quote unquote rejection, humiliation, abandonment, whatever it may be. Like, just be willing to go to the unknown places within yourself and within the dynamic of your relationship, and be willing to fucking see yourself. Like, just be willing to be willing.
Yeah. Call to action. If I haven't heard a call to action today, that's it. Like, everybody, I hope you heard that, and I hope you're willing to
Mm,
go there. Stefanos, you brought a free gift with you to today's show.
mm.
Can you tell the audience about it? And then also tell them where in all the social media areas you'd like
Sure.
everybody to find you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I mentioned that free gift earlier, and it's you can just go to my wife's website. So christinehassler.com/sacred union. That's where the free gift is. I'm sure you'll have that in your notes. Yeah.
Yep, down
Cool.
below.
Yeah. And you can find me on, I've got a couple of different websites, but Grow with Steph, STEF.com. So growwithsteph.com, and you can find me there. And there's some free gifts there as well for you. And, on social media, Stefanos Sifandos.
Thank you so much for being here today. And anybody, if you have felt called to explore sacred union, if you felt called to explore a deeper authenticity with yourself, with play, you know where to go. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today, Stefanos.
Appreciate
It
you.
has been a pleasure. And also, I'm quite envious of your bookshelf. Just to finish up, I'm super envious of your bookshelf.
Well, this is probably about a quarter of all the books I have. I have so many more in Australia that I haven't sent over yet. And I actually love some of those paintings in your background. I'm sure each one has a very unique story.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I just recently, probably about 8 months ago, decided to let myself just play with art.
Nice.
I know. I know. You're not supposed to touch oil paint, but I just wanted to feel it in my fingers, and I just kind of went bananas on a few pieces, and they're kind of everywhere now. So
That's
thank
cool.
you. Thank you. Yeah, it's that element of play. I had it locked inside me for so long. The painting
Yeah.
had literally what I said in the interview, that the painting had to look like this. I had to color in the lines. And if I didn't, it's not art. It's ugly. It's not what my brain says.
Mm.
And I was just like, well, fuck it. And I just threw it all out the window. And whatever it looks like is exactly perfect.
Perfect.
So thank you. All right, everybody, have an amazing day. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Abundant Life Mastery Mentor Series, and we'll see you later. Bye.